Hey everybody, how's it going? Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2 just got announced, and I gotta say, I was not expecting this game to have a sequel this soon. Not that I'm complaining, I just really hope that Ludosity and Fair Play Labs can put together a game that really justifies being a sequel. And from the looks of the trailer alone, the game definitely looks like it has way more polish this time around. I'm guessing that after the first game proved to be fairly well received, Nick gave the go-ahead for a much larger budget for the sequel, and I really enjoyed the first entry. I was a massive Nicktoons fan growing up, and I still am to this day, so the game won me over immediately. Sure, it isn't the most perfect platform fighter, but it's still a super fun and enjoyable game. It always bummed me out how this game was never really able to maintain the audience that I think it deserved. Sure, the game still has its competitive scene, but outside of the dedicated fans to the game, I really don't see too many people talking about this game as much anymore. There are a multitude of factors that most likely led to this. The game didn't really have a whole lot of content outside of the main mode, and voice acting got added much later after launch, not to mention that we never really did end up getting crossplay for the game either. I also think that with Smash Ultimate still going strong at the time, All-Star Brawl had some pretty hefty competition, especially with people comparing it to Smash and hyping it up as a Smash killer, despite the fact that the game was never intended to be a direct competitor to Smash. And with the sequel's release date seemingly being confirmed to be October 24th, it's going to have a lot of other big titles to compete with. However, with the lack of there really being a big platform fighter in the public eye as much anymore, All-Star Brawl 2 will hopefully have a much larger chance at winning players over this time around. I just hope that the game has plenty of content and a lot of the features that players have been asking for on day one. But just like the first time around, the most important thing about this game is still going to be the roster. Who's going to get added to the sequel? I'm assuming there are going to be no cuts from the game's roster, and we already have confirmed characters such as Jimmy Neutron, Squidward, Donatello, and Raphael, with Vlad Plasmius potentially being a playable character as well. I'm sure that the newcomer additions that we're going to get this time around are going to be even more interesting, seeing as we have already covered the main bases for Nick representation. I'm also going to add that I am aware of the supposed leak from Papagenos talking about the remaining 7 newcomers, one of which is rumored to be El Tigre, but for this video, I'm not really going to go by the parameters that Papagenos put in place for this video, because these aren't necessarily going to be predictions for what I think is going to get into the game, just characters that I want to see get added to the series at some point. I'm also not going to list any characters from already represented franchises because I want as much representation from all across Nicktoons as possible. So let's get started. My first character is probably the most obvious choice, Timmy Turner. The Fairly OddParents is an integral show to the Nickelodeon brand, and Timmy has always been one of the most requested characters to join the fight. I know there are some weird legal issues with Nelvana, but I genuinely don't think that that should pose too much of an issue. Timmy just feels like such a strange omission to have from a game celebrating Nickelodeon's icons. With us getting Jimmy confirmed for the sequel, I have to imagine that Timmy shouldn't be too far behind. From a gameplay standpoint, I think that Timmy can bring a lot to the table. Being able to make wishes is most likely going to be integral to his kit, and with there being endless possibilities for that, I could see it being a bit of an RNG situation like with Hero and Smash, where there would be a bunch of different items or attacks that Timmy could potentially wish for in a match. I really think that Timmy could be a super fun character, but the main reason that I personally want Timmy is because I want the Nicktoons Unite cast back together. Unite as well as Battle for Volcano Island are two of my favorite games from my childhood. I have an immense nostalgia for the Nicktoons games, so seeing that character lineup of Danny, SpongeBob, Timmy, and Jimmy in a game together again would be super cool. Alright, so next up is a character that is actually my most wanted character at the moment to get into the game. Snap from Chalk Zone. Chalk Zone is such a cool and unique cartoon, and I have so many memories of watching it on Nicktoons Network as a kid. The show was so unique and had such a fun look to it, not to mention how sick the theme song was, but the show is still fairly underrated as far as Nicktoons go. The show still has its following, but it isn't as big as some of the other bigger Nicktoons. Either way, I would still really like to see Chalk Zone get some representation in the game, and Snap is in a situation similar to Timmy where from a gameplay standpoint, he would probably be able to create a bunch of different things in the game due to the magic chalk that Rudy has. The chalk would add the ability to reference so many different things from Chalk Zone in Snap's moveset, and I could even see the chalk's ability to create portals coming into play as well. But no matter what his moveset could end up being, I still really want him in the game. having a character from my childhood represented in this big celebration of Nickelodeon history would make me extremely happy. Okay, so moving on to this next character, this next one isn't necessarily a character that's one of my all-time favorites, but still one that I think needs to be in the game if we're truly trying to celebrate the history of Nicktoons with this game. That character is Doug. Doug was one of the original 3 Nicktoons, so he's super important to the Nicktoons brand and just Nickelodeon's history as a whole, so to not have him in the game just felt like such a weird thing to not have in the first game. I think this could boil down to a situation where Nick isn't really sure if they can use him because while Nickelodeon made the first 4 seasons of Doug, the series was then sold off to Disney, who then produced the rest of the series. So I think that there could be some weird legal hangups with that, but at the same time, Nickelodeon does still own those original 4 seasons of Doug. It's a Viacom property. It's on Paramount Plus. It really seems that Doug's situation mirrors the idea of Sora being in Smash, especially considering the fact that they're owned by the same parent company now. But ownership aside, legal issues aside, I really do think that Doug would be a really fun character to have in Nick All-Stars Brawl, because Doug himself normally wouldn't seem like a character that would be in a fighting game, but he has so many alter egos that he fantasizes about being throughout the series that you could absolutely pull movesets from. You got Quailman, the superhero, Race Canyon, the action hero, and Smash Adams, the spy. So I definitely think that they could make a really fun moveset for Doug. Doug could essentially be made into sort of a stance switching character in the game. So I think that would be a really fun character to put in, and I hope that if Ludosity really wants to put him in the game, that they can overcome the legal issues with Disney. Next, we have a character, or characters, from another personal favorite series of mine, Cat Scratch. Cat Scratch comes from probably my favorite era of Nicktoons, because when it came out, it was airing alongside shows like My Life as a Teenage Robot, Danny Phantom, Avatar, The X's, El Tigre. It's definitely my favorite era of Nicktoons, and it's probably the one that I have the most fond memories of. The show unfortunately only had a single season, and despite that, I still think that it deserves to be held up among the other big Nicktoons of its time. The humor was great, the voice cast was great, and the show was just overall incredibly expressive. So I think putting these characters in a fighting game would be super fun. Now, as for which character would get in, I've seen some people suggesting Mr. Blick getting in as the rep, but I think something more fun would be to have all 3 cats. Not swapping out like a Pokemon trainer style character, but all 3 at once. Basically an ice climber situation, but with 3 characters. It would be chaotic, it would be wacky, and that's exactly the type of thing that I want to see in a Nickelodeon video game. And that's really all I have to say about those characters getting in. I just think that the series is super underrated, and I would love to see it get some sort of representation in this game, even if it's a very slim chance. My final character pick comes from a series that has been largely neglected by Nickelodeon, and that's Miko from Glitch Techs. This show is criminally underrated. It has a very dedicated cult following, but unfortunately, Nickelodeon just dumped it onto Netflix. The show has only gotten 2 seasons, and while it hasn't been officially canceled, there are no signs of there being a season 3. And it sucks because the show is incredibly good. The animation style is amazing. It's made by Flying Bark, who made Moon Girl on Disney, as well as Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is one of my favorite incarnations of TMNT. And the show's concept is so fun. It's literally gamers hunting real-life video game glitches. Basically Ghostbusters, but video games. And it's super fun, super cool, packed full of gaming references, and for that reason, I think that it would be a perfect fit for a fighting video game. The amount of different gaming references that you could put into Miko's moveset, like you could have her actually using moves from existing fighting game characters. Legally distinct, of course, but the point is that you could take from a bunch of these existing games and basically make an amalgamation type character in the form of Miko. Once again, even if Glitch Techs has a super slim chance of actually getting into this game, I think that it should. It would be a huge way for the game to reach a much larger audience, and I think it's just a really good way to represent modern Nicktoons by having a character that comes from one of the most recent shows that they've created. And that's really what I hope Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl can become. Sort of an avenue for people to discover series that they might not be as familiar with. Sort of like what Super Smash Bros. Does. Because I remember playing Melee on my GameCube back in the day, and I didn't know who characters like Ness or Marth or Roy were, but the game got me introduced to them, and now I love Fire Emblem, I love Earthbound, and so I think if you put characters from lesser known shows, more obscure cartoons into Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl, it could give these shows another chance at life. But at the end of the day, I'm just really happy that this game is getting a sequel. It looks way more fleshed out this time around, and I'm hoping that it can reach a much wider audience and maintain that audience for years to come, because I think that Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl, while it's not ever gonna be able to compete directly with Smash, it's still a really fun platform fighter that I think that people should at least try out. I'm super excited to play this game, and I cannot wait to see who they add. But for now, I think that's enough out of me. So if you guys like this video, feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video. Later.